Alright, welcome back. This is part 2 of the gramophone tutorial, and in this part we're going to start working on the low poly version. So as you can see here, we're going to try to remove all the floating geometry that are not necessarily needed. And as you can see here, there are a few of these, and basically what we're going to do is we're going to try to reduce the poly count to the minimum and try to reduce anything that is not going to be necessary. And we're going to start off with these pieces here, or these surfaces, and let's see how we are going to do this. So basically we can remove these additional polygons, or we can actually close these extruded surfaces by using the target weld tool, or we can just select the edges, control backspace to remove those. And I think this is going to be the easiest and the fastest, or the faster approach to do this. Of course, the whole extruded polygons here are not necessary because they're going to be baked from the high poly to the low poly. But the interesting thing is, how are we going to do this efficiently and in a reasonable amount of time, since there are quite a few of these. So we're gonna try to select everything and control backspace to get rid of those, and we're gonna find ourselves looking at a flat surface without all these details. So double click on the edge in order to select kind of in a loop, and keep holding control all the time in order to add up, or kind of bring the selection of all these sections together in order to do it only one time. And also, when you actually select everything at once, you're gonna be able to see whether you have selected certain areas or not, because the red line is gonna be telling you is gonna tell you where you've made progress and probably the areas you have missed. So there is a section from the outside, and also there is this side from the inside. We're gonna make sure that we're gonna take care of the inner side as well. So double click here in order to select everything. We're gonna remove this part as well. So basically we're gonna keep only the part that we started from in the first place. Alright, to remove, always control backspace, because this will not leave vertices in the where we kind of, sometimes when you only hold or kind of click on backspace, the vertices are going to be left where the edges were. Kind of, it's not a good thing to do. But when you click on control backspace, everything is going to be erased. Alright, so also these lines here are not necessarily needed, so we're gonna get rid of those. Nice. This section here is also doesn't need to exist, so we're gonna remove it like this, and we're gonna bridge between these polygons very easily. And I think this horn here and this extended part is a little bit it has a little bit too much polygons, so we're gonna try to reduce it a little bit by kind of welding certain vertices to each other in order to make sure that there aren't really an extra amount of polygons that we don't really need, because usually models like this are gonna have a little bit of extra edges and polygons, so we're gonna make sure that we're gonna remove all those that are not gonna be necessary in order to keep the poly count in a minimum. in order to keep it a minimum number that is acceptable from a game ready model points of view. Also here, this surface here doesn't have to have too many polygons. We can get rid of all those and just keep a flat surface. It will work perfectly normal. And my only concern is with cylindrical parts, because if a cylindrical piece is too low poly, then even with a perfect bake, it's not going to look good, because lack of polygons and smooth edges is going to show up and is going to appear in a very bad state even when the bake, as I said before, is going to be perfect. But when it is too low poly, it's not going to look good. So for example, when it comes to these pieces here, we're going to try to do the same thing. We're going to reduce the amount of edges we have here. We don't have to have all of those, and here as well. And the smaller the piece is, the better our chances, or the more we have the ability to reduce more, if you know what I mean, because it's not going to be as visible. But if we have a very big piece, then we're gonna be a little bit careful, and we're gonna make sure that we are giving it its fair share of polygons, because it's gonna be visible. And if we do it kind of in the wrong way, or if we reduce the poly count to a certain extent or to a certain point that is not acceptable, then we're gonna go back and fix it, which is a process that is a little bit time consuming. So here as well, this piece, I didn't actually show how I created it, because it is a very simple piece, and it's very easy to create. So, and this tutorial also is kind of a longer one. That's why I kind of made sure that I focused on the most important stuff. I try to target weld these vertices to the center vertex. Alright, so also when it comes to this screw, it is a very simple piece actually, and there isn't anything complicated with it. And as you can see here, we are gonna try to make sure that everything is flat and there is nothing really complicated there. Alright, so this piece as well is a very simple piece. We're gonna make sure that we're gonna remove all the edges and all the polygons that are not necessary, and there aren't really many of them. And for this piece, things are gonna be easy as well. So as you can see, the edges and the polygons are pretty much straight, and there isn't really a need for keeping all these edges and vertices. So we're gonna push them to the side and attach them to the corners. Alright, so when creating the low poly version, the best thing I like is kind of removing stuff and getting rid of floating geometry and the pieces that are not really necessary, because deleting stuff is the best way of creating the low poly. It's fun. deleting the everything that is not necessary. But when you find yourself tweaking lots of stuff and kind of stuck in jungle vertices, this can be a little bit frightening and time consuming. Alright, so this tool here is very good for knowing how much polygons you have on the selected objects. So here, this horn actually has a little bit kind of and what we are doing right now is we are trying to actually create an extra piece that I didn't really create in the high poly, because later when I looked up the reference images, I've seen that there is an essential piece right there, and it is actually a piece that plays the role of separator between kind of those floating geometry that separate the horn, or the kind of the details of the horn from the tube that goes to the other parts of this gramophone. Of course, we need to convert. We need to convert the this piece from the high poly to the low poly, and vice versa, depending on where we created this piece. And in the high poly, we need to add some support edges because it is high poly, and we need to apply a smoothing modifier in order to make it smoother and everything else. Alright, it seems like there are some vertices that we need to eliminate in the inside, because it is a little bit poly dense right there, and there isn't really a need to keep the amount of polygons we have there. And first of all, because it's not visible, and it's not going to be the focus or the center or the center of attention of the viewer. So the distribution is extremely unfair when it comes to where the poly count should be concentrated. So the rule is where the viewer is gonna be looking, you're gonna increase the poly count. For example, if you're creating some tools for a first-person shooter, whether it be weapons or equipment or something like that, that the player is gonna be looking or staring directly at. So these pieces or these weapons or whatever that the player is gonna be holding in his hand, it needs to be highly detailed. But a kind of an uninteresting or a piece that is not gonna be important, or some piece that is in the corner in the environment that you're not gonna spend 1 second looking at, probably doesn't need that really that much attention and care. So there's really a difference and a kind of unfair distribution when it comes to poly count and attention and details. So this is very important, and this is something you're gonna learn over time. So right now we are in the process of creating the UVs for our model. So usually I'm going to use shortcuts here a lot. So Shift-H from the keyboard in order to apply stitch selected, which is a very useful tool, and shortcut in order to attach pieces that should belong together very quickly and easily. So Shift-S from the keyboard, or just right click, stitch selected. So we're gonna try slowly to organize these pieces and put them in the right places, and also we're gonna try to make sure that we're gonna use some alignment tools. So the alignment tools are actually in the right top corner of the tools we have in the UV editor, and also there is a shortcut I use, which is X for horizontal alignment and Y for vertical alignment. I don't know if these shortcuts are the default or I assigned them to these hotkeys. I don't really remember, but if this is not the case, just go to right top corner. As you can see here in the right top corner of the screen, you're gonna find these alignment tools that are extremely important sometimes. When you actually finish the UV unwrapping of a certain piece, you need to apply a checker texture in order to see if the UVs were correctly assigned or created. Alright, so a big part of creating the UVs is actually organizing the pieces and the UV shells. So this helps a lot for creating the UV template later on. Alright, so we're going to spend a little bit of time trying to organize these UV shells properly, and we're going to make sure that they stay separated because there is a 90-degree angle separating between, not exactly 90 degrees, but um, um, we need to keep these pieces separated for baking purposes that we're going to see later. Alright, so the next piece. This one here is going to be very straightforward, and probably we're going to use the pelt tool, which is going to be is going to help us to get a very quick result. So we're going to cut it once, and we're going to use the pelt tool in order to make sure that everything is going to fall into place properly. Alright, so we just needed to delete these small pillars because they weren't really instances. So I just copied one of those, which is really gonna do the job for us. So the next pieces are gonna be very simple, like this one here, this base. It's a box. It has a shape of a box, so it's gonna be straightforward, nothing complicated about it. Alright, so this piece also is a piece that has a good amount of details to it, and these pieces here we really need to pay attention to how the structure of the UVs and the UV shells is created, and we need to respect the rules, of course, of UV unwrapping. Alright, so we're gonna make sure that the size is correct in order to match it with the size of the rest of the checker texture of the other pieces. Alright, so this piece is actually not really that complicated to work on, so we're gonna wrap it up real quick, or unwrap it in this case. It's kind of ironic. So the usage of the language and what we're doing sometimes contradict with each other. So also this piece here is going to be straightforward. We need just to cut it open from one side and apply the pelt tool in order to unwrap it real quick. Okay, when it comes to this horn here, we're gonna separate it into 10 parts because this is gonna be easier and is gonna actually be better for texturing and baking later. Since we initially want to show the results and kind of the seams when it comes to these separated 10 sections. Alright, so we're gonna make sure that we're gonna cut the seams properly because we're gonna need this to be in the right place in order to perform the next move. So we're gonna expand selection, make everything planar, and use the peel mode or the peel tool in order to make it even more relaxed. Alright, as you can see here, um, these pieces are really scattered all over the place, and I had to organize them properly. So right now we're gonna jump to the next part of this piece. And we're gonna pretty much do the same thing, which is kind of cutting some seams and separating some sections in order to do the UV unwrapping properly. Alright, so we're gonna make sure that these seams are cut properly, and also uh, from the inside, in order to as you can see here, if we apply the box mapping, it's not gonna work really in our favor. So we're gonna make sure that we're gonna use the pelt tool because it's better. Alright, so this piece here is a little bit bigger than I expected, so we're gonna relax it a little bit and put it with the rest of the pieces. So even though this horn here is one piece, there are different sections that we need to take care of. So this is a little bit counterintuitive, but it is really essential to make sure that everything is UV unwrapped properly. Alright, so make sure that the size of these UV shells kind of matches the size of the other pieces. All right, so now as you can see here, there are a few smaller pieces that we need to UV unwrap real quick, but I don't think it's gonna be a good idea to unwrap them individually. So we're gonna attach all these pieces together and UV unwrap them in one go. All right, as you can see here, so um, these pieces here are kind of a little bit messed up. So after we organize them and everything, we need to apply the checker texture and see if everything really looks like it is matching each other properly. So right now we attach everything together because we are ready to work on the UV template. And in this step, we are really going to bring all the elements together, or all the UV shells together, to put them inside one place, or in one place that we call the UV template, which is extremely important for the next processes that come later. Alright, so the rule is always make sure to put inside the bigger pieces first, because they are less flexible and they are kind of demanding. They demand a lot of space and uh, room for kind of expansion and movement. If this is a valid thing to say. All right, so we're gonna try to put in there the next pieces and organize them as we go. Also, the size of the whole UV template is subject to change at any given moment in time, because if we see that the pieces or the UV shells are too small, we need to expand them, and if we see that they are a little bit too big, we need to make them smaller. Alright, sometimes there would be some pieces that are kind of overlapping, so we're going to make sure that this is not going to be the case, and kind of separate them. Thank goodness these pieces are kind of small, otherwise the whole work we've done before could have been jeopardized. Because these small pieces, if duplicated, they're not going to make that big of a difference in the arrangement we've created here. Alright, so we are left with small pieces, so we're going to make sure that we're going to find a good place for those. Oh, it seems like we have too many pieces here, and the puzzle is coming to an end, so bear with me here because we are very close to creating the UV template we are seeking to create. Alright, so the UV template is completed, and right now we're going to jump to the next step, which is basically trying to rename our parts of the high poly and the low poly models. So this is going to be very simple, straightforward, and easy depending on how good you are at naming parts. So probably here I'm not going to do much explaining because the actions I'm going to take are kind of going to explain themselves, but the basics are we're going to use the rename tool that I am opening, or that is opened in front of you in the right top corner, and I'm going to switch constantly between the high poly and the low poly in order not to, because I don't want kind of layers standing in front of their in front of each other or on top of each other, collapsing and blocking my view. And I'm gonna use names according to what purpose they serve, and if there is an actual name, I'm gonna use that name. If not, I'm kind of gonna use something that indicates to the user or someone who's gonna use my model what is this name stands for, what that piece is actually standing for. Also, I'm gonna use a kind of a basic name and a suffix. This suffix is very important for Beacon and Substance Painter. This is basically telling Substance which one is high poly and which one is low poly. And I usually use underscore HP for the high poly and underscore LP for the low poly. So you are free to use whatever names you want to, because it's completely up to you if you want to choose any name you want or any naming convention you want. Alright, so when we're done with the process of naming, I just exported the high poly and low poly, and right now we're gonna bring the low poly in inside Substance Painter, and we're ready to start the process of baking. So you're gonna follow the settings I'm kind of using right now in order to do a test bake, then do the real bake. So yeah, if you want to test the bake before you start, this is going to be a good idea. But if you're sure about what you're doing, just follow the settings I'm using right now. You can slow down the video if possible in order to follow me slowly here. And when you make sure everything is correct, as you can see here, I just waited for a few minutes up to half an hour in order to get this nice good looking bake. So right now we are gonna start adding some smart materials to make sure we're gonna try to make sure that everything is gonna be positioned properly, and we're gonna name our folders and our smart masks and assign using the polygon fill our smart material to the proper pieces. Alright, it is already looking interesting so far. So the process of texturing inside Substance Painter is really a game changer, because Substance is really a revolutionary software that kind of took the process of texturing to the next level, really. So right now I'm trying to modify the layers of this wood material, which is good wood multiplier. If you don't have this smart material, just go to Substance Share, download it, go to algorithmic folder in your installation directory, and go to shelf, and you're gonna put it where smart materials should be, and exit your Substance Painter software, and then reopen it in order to load it up. So right click, add a black mask, and assign the wood material to these sections or these pieces once again, which is a very easy thing to do. So right now I just apply the steel smart material, add a black mask, polygon fill, and select the right pieces we are trying to the pieces that we need to assign it to. Alright, here the lower part of this disc is kind of steel, and the other part is plastic. So we're gonna make sure that we're gonna select few polygons here in order to be able to know exactly where these sections are in the UV template to make our lives easier. Alright, so right now I'm gonna apply this plastic material, add a black mask, and select the areas that need to be selected. So in order to see or to use this split viewport, just hit F1 from the keyboard. In order to see the 3D viewport or the perspective, only F2 from the keyboard. F3 to see the 2D viewport or to see the UV template. So I'm going to use actually some of these alphas that you can see here in order to create some nice, good looking details. So add a mask, and we're gonna start painting these ornaments. Even though the resolution is pretty low, it's pretty low, but when you look at it from a distance, it's gonna be enough good looking. So primarily, or in the start, I kind of used this single plant, very small ornament or alpha, and later, as you'll see, I decided that this wasn't really a good strategy for a reason that I'm gonna explain in 1 minute or two. All right, so I decided that was a bad idea because the size of the UV or actually the ornaments from the left side was different than the right side. So using actually a pre-made alpha was better in order to make sure that the ornaments or the alphas or the details that we are creating right now are gonna look similar in size from both sides, which is a very important thing to do. Alright, so I basically created two versions. One the original version of this alpha, and the other is kind of an inverted version, which serves the purpose of kind of creating the other side. So this way we're going to make sure that they look identical and similar from both sides. And really you can use any type of alpha you want. This is just something I wanted to add because it looked interesting. Alright, so I know that I'm not explaining really everything because Substance is an interesting software, and it has so many aspects and so many tools and so many things you need to learn. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Here we're gonna go with the small individual plant, and we're gonna paint over this kind of ring that the piece that we worked on just now is attached to. So as you can see here on the perspective viewport, kind of the what we are painting right now is appearing in real time on the other side. So we decrease, or we bring the as we bring the height a little bit down. It kind of looks that it is carved in, so it looks like a sculpture. So right now we're gonna do the same thing for the wood, and I just duplicated the base layer for the wood, and probably this is not the smartest thing to do, but we're gonna use this alpha here in order to do this. So we're gonna make sure that these 3 leaves are gonna be positioned perfectly where we want them to be, and of course I use the mask, and we're gonna start painting over. Don't pay kind of extra attention, and don't actually bother yourself with how this looks right now, because later we're gonna fix it. And by later I mean in the next minute. So we're gonna do this in all 6 sides, because this is something that is gonna be repeated all over the place. Alright, so when we're done, as we take a look at it in the perspective or in the 3D viewport, we can see that it's not really what we want to see. So we're gonna have to make an adjustment. I think using the we're gonna use a simple field layer in order to have a control over the result we're gonna use. So we're gonna copy the mask we created anyway and paste it over the layer that we want to use. In order to see the result we are creating right now. So if you made it till the end, thank you very much for watching. I hope this tutorial was informative and you actually learned some good stuff. Probably this was a little bit more complicated than I usually do. Thank you very much for watching, and thank you for becoming a Patreon if you did. And yeah, I'll see you soon in the next one.